16.2 million. That is the number of microplastic particles that a single polypropylene baby bottle can release into 1 liter of formula, prepared exactly the way health authorities tell you to prepare it. Not misused, not boiled beyond the instructions. Prepared correctly at 70 degrees Celsius, the temperature the World Health Organization requires. That figure comes from researchers at Trinity College Dublin, published in the journal Nature Food in October of 2020. And here's the part I need you to hear before anything else, because it is the reason this video is going to be different from most of what you will find on this subject. Those same researchers said, in their own words, that they do not know what those particles do to a baby. Professor John Boland, one of the authors, put it like this: "The last thing we want is to unduly alarm parents, particularly when we do not have sufficient information on the potential consequences. So I am not going to tell you your bottle is poisoning your child. Nobody can tell you that because nobody knows. What I can tell you is what was measured, who measured it, and what nobody was ever required to check, because that is the thread running through all of this. Nobody had to prove that bottle was safe before your baby drank from it." And I have to be straight with you about one more thing right at the top, because you clicked on a video about brands. When I went looking for 7 specific bottle brands with a documented record of harm, I could not build that list honestly. The evidence does not point at brands. It points at materials, at heat, and at words printed on packaging that mean far less than you think. So instead of 7 brands, I am giving you 7 red flags, every one of them sourced. And then 3 materials that get you as close to plastic-free as this market actually allows, along with the reason that phrase is almost never literally true. Let us start with how a baby bottle actually gets to a shelf, because it explains everything that follows. In the United States, a baby bottle sits under 2 authorities at once. It is a food contact article under the Food and Drug Administration, and it is a children's product under the Consumer Product Safety Commission. That sounds like thorough coverage. Look at what each one actually requires. Under the Consumer Product Safety Improvement Act of 2008, a bottle must be tested by an accredited third-party laboratory and carry a certificate. That testing covers lead content capped at 100 parts per million in the material and 90 in surface coatings. It covers certain phthalates, capped at 0.1%. And it covers mechanical hazards, meaning choking and breakage. That is a real protection, and I do not want to dismiss it. But notice what is not on that list. There is no microplastic testing, because there is no microplastic standard to test against. Not a limit, not a threshold, not a required method. According to analysis from the law firm Morgan Lewis in 2024, the Microbead-Free Waters Act of 2015 is the only federal legislation aimed specifically at microplastics in consumer goods. And it is about face scrubs, not baby bottles. It gets sharper. In August of 2017, the Consumer Product Safety Commission voted 5-0 to exempt 7 common plastics, polypropylene among them, from third-party phthalate testing altogether. Polypropylene is the plastic that roughly 8 out of 10 baby bottles worldwide are made from. And there is no pre-market approval. No agency looks at a new bottle design, evaluates it, and grants permission. The bottle is designed, manufactured, certified against those specific existing rules and sold. Which brings us to the label that reassured an entire generation of parents: BPA-free. Here is what most people believe happened. They believe scientists found bisphenol A was dangerous, and the government banned it from baby bottles to protect infants. That is not what happened. On July 17, 2012, the FDA amended its regulations to remove BPA-based polycarbonate from approved use in baby bottles and sippy cups. It did so in response to a food additive petition filed in October of 2011 by the American Chemistry Council. That is the plastics industry's own trade association. And the legal basis was not safety. It was abandonment, meaning the industry had already stopped using it, so the approval was removed as a formality. When the FDA published the filing notice, it stated that because the petition rested on abandonment, the agency was not requesting comment on the safety of BPA. An FDA spokesman said at the time that the agency continued to support the safety of BPA in products that hold food. So the label on your bottle is not the result of a safety finding. It is the residue of a paperwork change requested by the plastics industry after it had already moved on. Which raises the obvious question, moved on to what? That is red flag number 1, and it has a name in the scientific literature. Regrettable substitution. When BPA left, bisphenol S and bisphenol F largely took its place. In 2015, Johanna Rochester and Ashley Bolden published a systematic review in Environmental Health Perspectives covering 32 studies and concluded that BPS and BPF are as hormonally active as BPA and have endocrine-disrupting effects. A 2024 analysis published in Environmental Sciences Europe tested 11 bisphenol analogs and found they cannot be regarded as safer alternatives, with several equally or more active than BPA itself. Red flag number 2 is treating BPA-free as a safety guarantee. It is a statement about one molecule. It is not a statement about the other bisphenols, and it is not a statement about particles, which brings us to the evidence at the center of this. The Trinity College Dublin team tested 10 polypropylene infant feeding bottles, representing 68.8% of the global market. They deliberately did not name them and stated in the paper that the products were not being endorsed or criticized. Because the finding was not about a brand. Polypropylene accounts for 82.5% of the world's baby bottles, and the rest is mostly glass. What they measured was temperature dependent. At 25 degrees Celsius, around 600,000 particles per liter. At 70 degrees, the temperature recommended for formula preparation, up to 16.2 million. At 95 degrees, up to 55 million. Plus, in their words, trillions of smaller nanoplastic particles per liter. They then estimated daily infant exposure, a global average of about 1.58 million particles per day, with North America at roughly 2.28 million and Europe at about 2.61 million. Red flag number 3 is heat, and specifically the combination of heat, agitation, and plastic. The team found that degradation increased shedding, that vigorous shaking increased it, and that ultrasonic cleaning increased it. Now the counterweight, because I promised you accuracy. In July of 2024, the FDA published its position on microplastics and nanoplastics in food, stating that current scientific evidence does not demonstrate that the levels detected in foods pose a risk to human health. The agency also noted that there are no standardized detection methods, and that many studies have used methods of variable or limited accuracy. The Trinity researchers agreed on the uncertainty. Professor Laiwen Xiao said plainly that there is no data available to say whether they would have a negative impact on an infant. So hold both of those at once. The exposure is real and measured. The harm is unestablished. Anyone who tells you otherwise, in either direction, is going past the evidence. What is not uncertain is the regulatory divergence. In April of 2023, the European Food Safety Authority reassessed BPA and lowered its tolerable daily intake by a factor of roughly 20,000, concluding that dietary BPA is a health concern across all age groups. Germany's own risk assessment body publicly disagreed with the methodology that same day, which is worth knowing. Then in December of 2024, the European Union adopted a regulation banning BPA in food contact materials, in force from January of 2025, and the final text also captures BPS. Europe closed the replacement loophole. The United States did not. Red flag number 4 is decorative printing on the outside of a bottle, and this one has an actual recall behind it. On July 28, 2022, the Consumer Product Safety Commission recalled NUK First Choice glass baby bottles because the exterior markings exceeded the federal lead content ban. About 100 units in the United States. No injuries reported. That recall was small, but independent testers have found the same pattern much more widely. In March of 2024, the advocacy site Momavation published XRF testing of 32 bottles, science reviewed by Linda Birnbaum, the former director of the National Institute of Environmental Health Sciences. They reported detectable lead in the printed design on 69% of bottles tested, including 91% of the glass ones, with about a third exceeding the 90 parts per million coating limit. Notably, no plastic bottle in their sample had detectable lead in the print. The advocate Tamara Rubin, who publishes as Lead Safe Mama, has reported similar findings, including over 3,000 parts per million in the painted measurement markings of one glass bottle. Here is the caveat that has to travel with those numbers, and most channels leave it out. XRF testing measures whether an element is present on a surface. It does not measure whether that element migrates into milk. Those are different tests. These are advocacy organizations, not regulators. And one of their own results showed 2 units of the same product giving wildly different readings, which tells you spot testing has limits. Presence is not the same as leaching, but it is a reasonable, cheap precaution to choose a bottle without painted decoration on it. Red flag number 5 is the unverifiable label claim. There is no federal definition of non-toxic and none of plastic-free. The Federal Trade Commission's Green Guides say it is deceptive to misrepresent a product as non-toxic, and that marketers need competent and reliable scientific evidence. But the Green Guides are guidance rather than binding rules, and no agency pre-approves those words before they go on a box. Red flag number 6 is assuming a lawsuit equals a finding. In 2024, a wave of class actions was filed against major bottle makers, alleging that BPA-free labeling misleads because polypropylene sheds microplastics when heated. Those are allegations. And the most significant ruling so far went against the plaintiffs. A California federal judge partially dismissed the case against Philips, holding that the BPA-free label is not misleading because it only promises the absence of bisphenol A, not freedom from all plastic byproducts. Newell, which makes NUK, argued similarly that no reasonable consumer would read the label as a claim about microplastics. Consumer Reports, testing 9 popular bottles from Boone, Komotomo, Dr. Brown's, Green Sprouts, Lancino, MAM, NUK, Philips Avent, and Tommy Tippy, found no BPA, lead, or phthalates in any of them, and stated that there is nothing to suggest the bottles named in those lawsuits are particularly problematic compared with other plastic bottles. Red flag number 7 is the untraceable bottle. A novelty or unknown seller product with no identifiable manufacturer, no certificate, and no recall history you can look up. Because the entire system we just walked through, thin as it is, only works if there is somebody to hold responsible. So what does a parent actually do on a Tuesday night? Start with the one thing that is genuinely non-negotiable, because I will not give you advice that trades one risk for a worse one. Powdered infant formula is not sterile. The World Health Organization recommends reconstituting it with water no cooler than 70 degrees Celsius, which is 158 degrees Fahrenheit, to kill Chronobacter sakazaki and Salmonella. According to the Centers for Disease Control, reported case fatality rates for invasive Chronobacter infection in infants have been as high as 40%. Do not use cooler water to reduce microplastics. That is not a trade-off. That is a catastrophe. The Trinity researchers understood this, which is why their own recommendations preserve the temperature rule. Here they are, in full. Sterilize the bottle following guidelines and let it cool. Boil water in a non-plastic kettle, glass or stainless steel. Rinse the sterilized bottle with room temperature sterilized water at least 3 times. Then prepare the formula in a non-plastic container, using water of at least 70 degrees. Let it cool to room temperature there, and only then transfer it into the bottle. Do not reheat formula in plastic, and do not use a microwave. Do not shake formula vigorously inside the plastic bottle. Do not use ultrasonic cleaning on plastic bottles. That sequence keeps the Chronobacter protection completely intact while removing the plastic from the hottest, most agitated part of the process. It is the single most useful thing in this video. The American Academy of Pediatrics, in its 2018 policy statement on food additives and child health, gives compatible advice. Avoid microwaving food or milk in plastic. Avoid running plastics through the dishwasher. Use glass or stainless steel when possible. And avoid recycling codes 3, 6, and 7. And note what the Academy does not say. It does not tell parents to stop using plastic bottles. The most common mistake that undoes a good choice is switching materials and then heating everything in the microwave anyway. The material matters less than the heat. Which brings me to the part I did not expect when I started this, and it is the reason the phrase plastic-free deserves an asterisk. Buy the glass bottle, buy the stainless steel one. Now look at the nipple. It is silicone. So is the collar usually, or it is plastic. So is the cap and the vent system inside. The part that spends the most time in warm milk and inside your baby's mouth is a polymer on virtually every bottle sold, including the ones marketed as plastic-free. Silicone is not polypropylene, and it does not shed hard particles the same way. Health Canada considers food-grade silicone stable and safe for baby products. But research reviewed by the Food Packaging Forum has found that siloxane migration from repeated-use silicone sometimes exceeded legal limits, particularly during the first cycles of use, and increased with heat and fat content. A genuinely 100% plastic and silicone-free infant bottle essentially does not exist, because a baby needs something soft to feed from. So plastic-free in practice means the body of the bottle. It never means the whole bottle. With that understood, here are the 3 materials that get you closest, honestly described. Glass, no microplastic shedding from the body, and the least likely to leach bisphenols or phthalates according to Consumer Reports. It handles high heat sterilization without polymer degradation. The downsides are weight and breakage, though it is worth noting I could not find a single Consumer Product Safety Commission recall of a glass baby bottle for shattering. The documented real-world issue with glass is the painted decoration on the outside, so choose plain, undecorated glass. Stainless steel, no shedding, no bisphenols, unbreakable, and food grade 304 is chemically stable. It is more expensive and you cannot see the milk level. Purakiki is the notable example carrying Made Safe certification, which is a material screening program rather than a government approval. Silicone. Soft, shatterproof, and it does not shed hard particles the way polypropylene does. Komotomo and Green Sprouts were among the bottles Consumer Reports found clean. Choose food grade and filler free, and be aware that a Boone Silicone 3-pack was recalled in 2026 for a choking hazard after 135 reports of the outer shell peeling with no injuries. Even the good materials get recalls. So let us go back to where we started. You were told BPA-free and you believed the system had checked. It had not. That phrase came from a petition filed by the plastics industry, granted on the grounds that the industry had already stopped using the chemical, and the agency explicitly declined to rule on whether it was safe. 14 years later, Europe banned both the original chemical and its replacement, and here, no agency sets a microplastics limit, no agency defines non-toxic, and no agency looks at a new bottle before it goes on sale. Nobody had to prove that bottle was safe before your baby drank from it. That is not a scandal about one company. That is the design of the system. So here is the small thing, the one that carries the weight of everything above. Tomorrow morning, change the order of operations. Boil your water in glass or steel. Mix the formula in a glass or steel container at 70 degrees or hotter, exactly as the guidance requires. Let it cool there, then pour it into the bottle. Skip the microwave, skip the vigorous shake, and if you are buying new, choose a bottle with nothing painted on the outside. That is it. No panic, no throwing out everything you own, and no compromise on the one risk that is actually proven to kill infants. If your baby has a medical condition or you have specific concerns about feeding, that conversation belongs with your pediatrician, not with a video. Because the last check in this system is not a laboratory, and it is not an agency. It is you, at 2 a.m, deciding what order to do things in. If this changed how you look at the bottle on your counter, stick around, because we go through the products in your home that nobody else is willing to question.